this edition of the My Decorative Quilter 2 Block of the Month series, our webinar. This is block 2 of 12. It's a pieced block, otherwise known as a piece in the hoop block or stitch and flip, if you will. It was created for you by Rita Gazard and presented by myself, Mark Garrett. I'm a National Floriani educator. I always like to show you a picture of what the finished block is going to look like before we get into the software and the construction portion. So as we go through those details, you have an idea in your head of where we're headed with it. So this is what the block looks like. It's based on the basic block that we did last month. And what we've done is add some more piecing to the center, and we're going to reuse the quilting stitches that we used last month. So we'll get into that in a second. So this is, again, a picture of it. So I'm going to go ahead and close up this PowerPoint, and I'm going to get right into the software. So here's the software, and if you haven't already done it, if your screen is gray, I want you to go ahead up right here to the corner and click on the new page icon to get a new blank page to work with. The first thing we're going to do is get that page set up so that we're all on the same page. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to right-click on the ruler bar. So as we go through today's software portion, if I tell you to right-click, that means to literally right-click on the right-click button on your mouse. If I just say click, that means a left-click. So I'm not going to continually say left-click. But if I say click, again, that means left click. If I want you to right click, I'm going to specifically say right click. So when you right click anywhere on the ruler on the top, you're going to get this little pop-up menu. You want to make sure you're in inches mode. You want to make sure that show grid is checked. And you also want to make sure that snap to grid is checked. And lastly, we're going to come in and we're going to change our grid settings. So go ahead and click on grid settings, and another window will open. We want to set our horizontal and our vertical grid spacing to 1.375 inches, so 1.375 in both. Our grid major is going to be set to 1 and 1, so you want to set those both to 1, which means that for every one of these, there's going to be one of these, which means the grid major is basically going to equal this. And you can see the rest of everything should stay the same. Go ahead and click OK to lock those changes in. And initially, your screen should look something like this. Now, we're going to work with these 4 grid blocks in the center here. So to get them big so we can see them a little better, we're going to zoom in. Now, on my screen and most screens, if you select the zoom percentage from your zoom control up at the top here, if you click the down arrow and click 200%, it should zoom in just to about right here. Now, if your screen doesn't do that, you'll want to adjust your zoom percentage to where you can see these 4 center blocks. And you can see we've got 0 here and 0 here, so we're right in the center. So it's important to create the block as we're going to do this right in the center, because that's going to be important later as we go through the design. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set up some colors in our design palette so that we can easily select them. So you can see down here at the bottom, we've got all the colors in the Floriani palette that we could choose from. But up here in our design colors, it's got nothing in it. It's all grayed out. That's because we don't have anything in our design yet. Now, if we were to load into design, it would load in the thread colors here. But we're going to create some colors. In order to not have to continually search through here for the colors that we need, we're going to use a cool shortcut that's built into the program. And we're going to add some colors to our design palette before we get started so we can easily select them. So we're going to use 2 dark blue colors. I'm going to find this first dark blue right here, which is rocket blue. And when I right-click on it, I'm going to get a little pop-up that says Add to Design Palette. So when I click on that, it adds it into my design palette here so I can easily find it when I want to use it later. We're going to need another dark blue, so I'm just going to go to the next dark blue in the palette, which is this actually called dark blue, and I'm going to right-click on it and add it to the design palette. So I've got 2 dark blue colors here, and we're going to use those as we create our stitches. Now, the reason we're going to use 2 dark blues is we're going to alternate our stitching between one and the other. And the reason we're going to alternate is so that the machine stops to prompt you to change the thread color. And as we'll get into more detail when we get into the construction, you don't actually want to change the thread color. The stops are just there to make the machine stop so we can put our fabric down and then continue stitching. So once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw in some artwork lines that we're going to use as both guidelines to create some of our stitches and also our placement lines. So to do that, we're going to come up here to the top menu and we're going to click our line artwork tool, and that's going to change our cursor into a little crosshair, and wherever we click now, we're going to start putting in lines. And we're going to start right here at this far left intersection. So we're going to start right here. We're going to click, and because Snap to Grid is turned on, we don't actually have to get right on. In other words, we can get somewhere close to it, and it's going to snap to that point. I'll do that on purpose right here. I'll get a little farther off of it, and I will go ahead and left click, and you can see it snaps that line right to the point. And I'm going to continue on around. I'm going to snap to that point, down to this one down here at the bottom, then back up to where we started, and then I'm going to right-click to tell it that I'm done. And that's pretty much the way things work within the Floriani software when you create stitches or create artwork lines like this. We draw what we want, then we right-click to tell the software that we're done drawing. So that's what we've done. So you can see over here in our sequence view that we put in that first diamond, and now we're going to put in a square pattern, and we're going to do it basically where you see that bounding box right now. So we're going to click our line tool one more time, and this time we're going to draw it in starting right here. So we're going to start at this point and click, and we're going to come down to this bottom right corner, click, down to the bottom left corner, click, top left corner, click, top right corner, click, back to the beginning, click, and then we're going to right-click to finish it. So we've got our two artwork pieces in here, and now we're going to convert these into stitches. Before we do that, though, just so this grid line doesn't distract us from now on, we're going to turn it off. There's several different ways you can do that, but we're going to use the shortcut over here on the left toolbar, which is our grid toggle, and a toggle basically means to turn something on and off. So if we click that, it's going to turn the grid off, and if you see if I click it again, it's going to turn the grid back on. So it toggles back and forth. So I'm going to click it to turn the grid off, which is what you want to do, and that's going to leave us with our two artwork guidelines here. Now what we're going to do is we are going to create our stitches for the fabric placement. So we're going to use this diamond first, so we're going to click on it over here in my sequence view to select it, and we're going to convert that into a set of run stitches. To do that, we're going to use our one-click wonder icons down here at the bottom. This one converts it into a run stitch, but with my decorative quilter, it does something special. It not only converts it into a run, but it leaves the original artwork behind. If this were stitches, it would automatically convert from one stitch type to the other. But when you start with artwork, it leaves the artwork behind, and that's very useful because we actually want to reuse this artwork again. So we're going to go ahead and click our run stitch icon, and you can see that's going to put it in. It automatically puts it in a red color. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and leave it there. But you can see I've got the stitches down here now, and I've still got my original artwork. Now this is going to be a placement line for the batting, or actually our first piece of fabric rather, and we don't really need it to be as tight as the default stitch length of 3 millimeters. Since it's just a placement line, we can change our stitch length to 4, and it'll stitch a little faster and be a little easier to pick out if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to a 4, and I'm going to go ahead and click Apply. And now our stitch length is set to 4 millimeters. Now, we've created it here, but what we really want is a bigger line outside. So we're going to, because that's going to be where, this is going to be our stitch line, our seam allowance is going to be out here. We want this to more represent the seam allowance. So we're going to do that by resizing those stitches to create our seam allowance. So we're going to come over here to our transform, and we're going to change the width to 3.45 inches. Before you do that, though, make sure that maintain aspect ratio is checked. What maintain aspect ratio does is it makes it so that it stays proportional. Since this is basically the same measurement, when we change one, the other one is going to change to match it. So I'm going to type over the 2.75 and I'm going to put in 3.45, and you can see the bottom one changes. And I'm going to go ahead and click apply, and you can see now that we've got a bigger set of stitches outside our original artwork. So we can't actually see everything now. We want to correct that. So we're going to use a really cool shortcut in the software, and that's a double click of our zoom tool or magnifying glass. So if I double click it now, it's an automatic zoom to fit. So it puts everything on the screen to where we can easily see it. And I use that shortcut a lot. So we're now going to create our first set of tack down stitches, and we're going to do that by drawing in our run stitches directly. So I'm going to come up here to our run stitch input tool, which is up here right next to the line tool, and I'm going to click it. But before I start putting in the stitches, I'm going to come over here to my properties box, and I want these tack downs to be a little bit tighter than the default stitch length of 3. I want them to be a default of 2.5. So I don't have anything selected yet. I don't have any stitches selected. So if I change anything over here in the run stitch with nothing selected, that's going to temporarily change the default input for this type of stitch for everything else in this design. So if I change it now to 2.5 and click apply, it doesn't actually apply it to any stitches because there's no stitches selected, but it applies it to the run stitch default. So now whenever we draw in run stitches, they're going to come in at 2.5 millimeters, and that's going to keep us from having to go back and change it each and every time. So we're actually going to draw in our stitches now. So we're going to start over here in this left corner, and we're going to click here. We're going to come up to the top along our guideline and click, and then we are going to right-click to tell it that we're done. And I actually messed up that step. I needed to do one thing in between. So I'm going to undo that stitch input, and this is a great thing. This is our undo button. Takes the stitch away, because I needed to change the stitch color first before I do that. So what I'm going to do is come down here to these temporary colors that we put into our stitch palette, and I am going to click on the first dark blue color, and now I'm going to draw in my stitch. So I'm going to click here, and right-click, and now it puts it in the rocket blue color that I wanted and not the red. And you can see now that a 2 appeared because this is actually the second color that I'm going to stitch out. We haven't yet applied this color, so there's no number in it yet, but that's going to change right now because I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to come over to my other side, and I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to click down here and right-click. And you can see now a 3 came up, so I've got this in one blue, this in the other blue. And we're going to continue alternating between these two blues as we go through putting down these stitches. So I'm going to re-click on the first blue color. I'm going to start at the bottom this time, and I'm going to come up to the top left here, and I'm going to right-click to tell it I'm done. I'm going to click on my second blue, and I'm going to come up to the top and click, come down to my lower right and click, and left right-click to tell it that I'm done. And now I've got my tack down stitches in for the center triangles. And I've alternated colors, and again, I've alternated those colors so the machine can stop. Now we're going to put in our second set of placement stitches, and I'm going to come to our square artwork that we created here, and I'm going to use that to put in my placement stitch for the next set of fabric. So to do that, I'm going to repeat what I did the first time, convert it into a run stitch by clicking on my run stitch icon down here at the bottom, my one click. So that's going to put it in, and just like the other, we need to increase the size to take advantage of our seam allowance. And because this one is lined up perpendicular, we can put our transform of our seam allowance in directly. So we want a 1/4 inch on each side, and we're at 2.75, so that means a 1/4 inch on each side is a 1/2 inch. So we're going to put in 3.25 inches. Notice at the bottom changes because we still have maintain aspect ratio checked. And I'm going to click apply, and we're now going to have a bigger set of stitches out here, which is going to show us where to place those pieces of fabric. So what we're going to do now is create our second set of tack down lines, And we're going to do the same thing that we did. But before we do that, no, we're going to leave this alone. No, I'm sorry. We are going to come in here to our run stitch, and again, our default on that run stitch was 2.5 millimeters, and again, this is a placement line, so we don't need it to be that tight. So I'm going to change it to a 4 and click apply, and that is going to change it. Now again, because we've just got that selected, I've changed it right there, but I've not changed my default. So when I put in my next set of stitches, it's going to be okay. It's going to come back to 2.5. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click my Run Stitch icon. And before I start putting in the stitches, I want to remember to click color number 2. And so I'm going to start down here at the bottom right, and I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to come over here and click along our artwork guideline, and I'm going to right-click to tell it I'm done. I'm going to come to our second dark color, which is color number 3, come up to the top, click here, come over to the right and right-click to tell it I'm done, alternate back to color number 2, start where we left off, up here, come down to the bottom and click, right-click to tell it we're done, and come back to our color number 3, and start over here on the bottom left, click, come up to the top, click, right-click to tell it that we are done. And so we put in all of our stitches for this portion of the block. Now what's important to realize about this particular block is that we're going to reuse the stitches that we created last month. So if you have not yet created your stitches from last month's project, you want to make sure you go ahead and do that before you start this block, because we're going to load those stitches in right now rather than have to redraw them all. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come up to our File menu, and we're going to find the item that says Merge Stitch File. So we're going to click that, and it's going to open up a folder, or a window rather, so you can navigate to the folders on your computer. And we're going to go ahead and double-click the computer icon. We're going to go to the C drive. We're going to find the Floriani folder, go to Designs, and if you stored it in the place we had you put it last month, you will have put it in your MDQ Projects folder, which is right here, in the November folder, because it was the November project. So I'm going to open the November folder, and here's November 2015. And you want the quilted block 1 of 12, and you want to make sure you load the WAF version. Don't use the basic block. We're going to reuse that later some other months. But you want this one here, the quilted block 1 of 12.waf. Do not bring in the machine file. So if you saved it in PES or VP3 or EXP or whatever other machine format, that's not what you want to load. You want to load in the WAF version. So go ahead and select that and go ahead and click Open. And when it brings it in, it's going to try and offset it usually so that it's not overlapping the design that we just did. But we actually do want it to do that. And this is why it was important that we put this design in the center, because we're going to move this one to the center so that they overlap perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to click it to select it. And when you merge a file in, it all comes in as one big group. So it's easy. You can just click anywhere on it so we can move it where we want to. And that's primarily the reason why they come in grouped. And instead of actually dragging it to where we want, we're going to use this Center Selected Objects tool right here. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to center it on the screen. Because we created this one in the center of the screen, it's actually going to do the job of centering those objects up. And we're going to double-click on our magnifying glass icon to put it all back in the center so you can see what we've done. So we've brought in all of the stitches from last month's project on top of this month's. Now the very first set of stitches in last month's project was this one right here. So you want to come over to our sequence view and click that blue big square, which is right below where the last thing we created was. So you want to select that because this was the placement line for our batting. And that was the very first thing that stitched out in last month's project. We want it to be the first thing that stitches out in this month's project, but as you can see, because of the way we loaded it in, it's way down in the sequence. So we're going to use one of the cool sequence shortcuts to move it up to the top. So what you want to do is click on it to select it, and then you're going to right-click it, and you're going to see a little menu pop up. You're going to want to find the menu that says Move, hover over the top of that, and you can see you've got some options here. We want this to stitch out first, so the very first option says first. So we're going to click that, and it's going to move it up to the top of the sequence view. So it's going to stitch that part out first, which is exactly what we want, because that's going to become the placement line for our batting. So all we need to do now is we need to save this file. So we're going to come up here to our Save icon, and we're going to click that, and it's going to who knows on your system where it's going to put it, but I suggest you put it in the December 2015 folder in the MDQ projects. You can see I've already got one in here. It comes in automatically when you load it, and you can see we've got two of them, and because one is called Pied Block 2 of 2. Pied Bach, I must have mistyped it when I was playing with it. So we don't actually want that one. I could save it over the top of this one, but let me actually just change it to Pieced. Wait, let me type it correctly. Pieced block 2 of 12. I'll call it my block to be the one that I saved, and it's going to save it in the WAF format. And then what we need to do is we finally need to save this in our stitch format. And to do that, you want to come up and click the File menu and click Save As. You'll get basically what looks like the same dialog. And what you want to do is you want to click the down arrow. Instead of saving it in the WAF format, you want to save it in your machine's format. So for example, if I had a Baby Lock Bernina machine or Brother machine, I could save it in the PES version 9 and click Save, and it would save it with the PES extension. And now I can take that file and put it over on my machine. So that completes the software section of this month's project. So let's go ahead and move on to the construction portion. And I'm going to go ahead and start up my PowerPoint one more time. You have seen this slide, so I'm not going to repeat it. Again, there's a picture of what it looks like. So let's talk a little bit about the overview of the project. This, as you know by now, is the second of 12 blocks. There's going to be one block per month. Each block is going to be stitched out 4 times. And at the end of the 12 months, there'll be a total of 48 blocks that we'll have created. And we're going to join them together along with some quilted borders and mock binding to create a 45-inch by 57-inch completed quilt. So that'll be the 13th project in the series, the stitching of the quilted borders, doing the binding, and putting it all together. The materials lists that follow are going to list the materials just for this month's block. If you want to see the complete materials list for the whole quilt, see the first month's block instructions. So the materials required, it's going to be in 2 parts. These are the basic materials. You're going to need some Floriani quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting or Floriani embroidery batting. Either one of those 2 will work fine. You want some Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer. Preferably you want the non-fusible, and any color will work. You want embroidery and bobbin thread. You want to choose colors that work well with your fabric choices. And don't forget, your bobbin thread is going to end up showing on the back of the quilt. So choose bobbin thread that goes with your backing fabric. And you'll need some R&K embroidery perfection tape. That's what we call the pink tape. And you're going to need a minimum 6-inch by 6-inch or 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter hoop size. For the fabric, you're going to need some batting. You're going to need 4 5.5-inch squares of batting. Fabric A, you're going to need 4 4 1/4-inch squares cut diagonally twice. So you'll end up with 16 small triangles. Fabric B, you're going to need 2 sets of pieces. You're going to need 4 4-inch squares cut in half just once diagonally, and then 4 3 3/8-inch squares. So just leave it as a square. Fabric C, you're going to need 4 4-inch squares cut diagonally twice. Again, you'll end up with 16 pieces. And 4 3 3/4-inch squares cut the same way, so diagonally twice. And these fabric quantities that we've just outlined, they make all 4 blocks. Now, before we get into the actual embroidery, I just want to remind you that some of the color changes in this design are there to make the machine stop so that we can take the fabric and place it down in the hoop and then stitch out the next part of the design. If you have a multi-needle machine, you're going to want to insert some stop commands so that the machine stops. Otherwise, it's going to go pick up the next color automatically and continue on, so that's not what we want. So you're going to have to use your machine controls to insert those stop commands. And you can leave the same thread in for each color, or you can change it if you want. Personally, I like to just load my thread and leave it in for the whole project. So let's go ahead and get started with the actual embroidery. First thing you want to do is you want to load in the quilted block 2 of 12 design into your machine. So that's what we've just saved. And make sure you load the machine file. You want to hoop up a piece of Floriani nylon no-show mesh. Get it nice and tight in the hoop. Attach the hoop to your machine and go ahead and stitch out the first color, which will be the placement line for the batting. So that's going to make a square out near the edge of the hoop like you see here. You're going to want to go ahead and place the square of batting within those placement lines and then secure the corners with embroidery perfection tape and get as close to the corner as you can. You want to stitch out the next color, which will be the placement line for the first piece of fabric. Once you've done that, you want to center the fabric B, the 3 3/8-inch square, within the lines, and it's going to be right side up. This is the only piece of fabric that's going to be right side up as we go through. All the rest you're going to place right side down. But the first one we want to start right side up. Once you've done that, you're going to place 2 more pieces of fabric. These are going to be your fabric C small triangles along those placement lines with the right sides down with the points in towards the center and the long side of the triangle on the placement line as you see here. And you want to go ahead and stitch the next 2 colors to tack down those triangles. Next, you want to press open the 2 triangles so you can see it here. Now, this slide we're showing you pressed open. The next few slides, so we don't have to show you a bazillion pictures, we're going to shortcut here. So this is what it looks like as you press them open. And you want to go ahead and place the fabric C triangles, the other 2, along the other 2 placement lines, right sides together, and stitch the next 2 colors to tack down those triangles. You're going to press those open and stitch the next placement line, and then you want to place your fabric A triangles against the top and bottom placement lines with the right sides down, as you see in the picture here. Stitch out the next 2 colors to tack those 2 pieces of fabric down. Press them open, then place the fabric A triangles, the last 2, against the left and right placement lines, right sides down, and stitch the next 2 colors to tack them down. You're going to press those open and stitch the next placement line. Then you're going to place your fabric 2B triangles against the left top and right bottom placement lines with your right sides down. Stitch the next 2 colors to tack those down, and repeat that. Press them open. Repeat the placement and the stitching with the remaining 2 fabric C triangles and stitch to tack those down. And before you press those open, however, you want to change the top thread, if necessary, to the color intended for your quilting. And then you want to remove the tape. That's very important. You want to remove the tape, and then you want to press these open. Then you want to stitch out the remaining color, which is for your quilting stitches, and you want to stitch out the last color for the guidelines. Now, it occurred to me that I told you to make sure your bobbin thread matched your backing fabric. I told you incorrectly because the backing fabric's not part of this quilt. I'm used to the older quilt block where we had the backing fabric on the back. We're going to apply our backing fabric a little bit differently in this project, so your bobbin thread really doesn't matter, but it's probably a good idea to make it match the top thread just in case any of it comes through the top. So go ahead and remove the block from the hoop, trim the block to 6 inches square, and repeat the entire sequence 3 more times to make a total of 4 blocks, and that'll complete this month's version of the project, or section of the project rather. So we want to thank everybody for attending. We will hope that you use this video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate the project at home. Come back next month for the next installment of the series, and don't forget to post your blocks on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page, because we're going to have a contest at the end of the quilt. We're going to have a contest, and in order to win the prize at the end of the contest, you will have to have posted your block all the way through, so a blocks each month, and then you're going to have to post a picture of your final quilt. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to DJ, and he's going to show us some pictures of last month's project. You still have some time to get that completed, because we're going to cut it off at the end of December, right, DJ?
Correct.
Okay, so
you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you. So you can take control of the screen again.
All right, give me 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, maybe I need to get rid of this. Hold on. Yes, I can.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you is some of the finished quilts that have come in, posted on the Facebook page, and they're all very different, and they came out really, really well. So you can see on the first one I'm showing you here on the screen. So you're going to scroll through them really quick.
DJ, I just want to clarify that this is last month's quilt project, or not last month's, but last series of blocks, not this new series.
Correct. Thank you. Here's another one using blue, purples, turquoises, and then here's one with browns and blues, and just each one looks so different, and I love how they all came out. Here's another one. They all look so different, but really, really good. And so here's another one. Here's another one that was really colorful. So these came out really, really well. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to create the quilt and post them on the Facebook page, and we're looking forward to announcing winners, I guess, at the first webinar we do at the beginning of the year. And thank you, Mark, for another wonderful webinar. And we look forward to seeing what you guys come up with for this next competition. And we've already started getting some blocks in. I was going to show those, wasn't I?
You were. I was going to remind you, but you reminded yourself, so that's good.
I did. Give me 1 second here. I got to bring it up. We just have 2 of them. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so here's one, and then here's the next one. So we've already gotten some in, and we look forward to seeing more. We look forward to seeing this month. And thank you guys for participating. We really appreciate it. And I guess we'll close for now, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
In the new year.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.